Okay, today I'm going to go through the joy of explaining to you how much of a nightmare this motorcycle project has been and all of the challenges that we've had to overcome, figure out, deal with, and pretty much just go through it and answer a lot of questions that I particularly had whenever we decided to take on this build. That there was a lot of different answers, solutions. I mean, everybody on the internet is a genius and knows exactly what they're talking about, but you know, there is very little proof of what works and what doesn't out there. So this project started out as something that my business partner and I wanted to kind of take on and really do a thorough job of doing everything the right way, because we were tired of seeing hack jobs. And I know you're probably looking at this thing and you're like, wow, are those zip ties holding the tank on? Is there a rag in between the tank and the seat? Yes, and yes. So I'm gonna go through all of the mistakes that we did on this bike, all the things that we need to correct, all the things that we wish we would have done differently, so that you can really just use this video as an advice, maybe for your build or for, I don't know, any other build that you've got going on. So first things first, it's got this hideous Super Sport tank on there. This is a 1981 cb750C or custom. It's the cruiser version of the cb750s, because you have the K and the F also. So that is not the tank that came with the bike. The tank that came with the bike was much shorter, and it was more of a cruiser style tank. I'm sure you guys have probably seen it. So first mistake, I bought this motorcycle in the winter, so we were really kind of took our time with everything except the tank, because by the time we were messing with the tank, it was already spring and I was getting really antsy and I just wanted to ride it. So the biggest mistake that we did with the tank is, obviously, we did not treat the inside of the tank when we should have. That caused the biggest amount of our problems, and the biggest reason why it's now, we're coming up to November and it's just now rideable again. So me being you know, impatient, I just put a gallon of Evapo-Rust inside of the tank and sent it off to a body shop to get painted. Now, on the outside, the tank looked gorgeous. We had it painted I want to say it was, I don't even know what you would call it. It's a dark green and it had gold flake in it, and it looked absolutely stunning. I mean, in the sun it would shine like crazy. But on the inside, it was total crap. The factory sealant was coming apart and it was flaking into tiny little pieces, and it would make its way to the carburetors and in return, the needles would get stuck in the carburetors and they just would not stop leaking and leaking and leaking. So that led to me obviously being frustrated. I just spent, you know, $400 having the tank professionally painted, whatever. I took the tank back off. We tried cleaning it out. Didn't work. Kept giving us the same problems. Then I ended up buying a house, so I had to park the motorcycle with the crappy tank on it in a garage, and during the time that it was parked, the seams started leaking, and it leaked gas all over my engine. The paint started bubbling up because obviously it was leaking behind the paint. So all of the paint started bubbling up at the seams. It pissed gas all over the freshly painted engine. That paint, the gas resistant paint, LOL, was not very gas resistant. So the engine is, you know, completely messed up now, paint wise. From far away you can't tell, but you can see there in that corner, all that's where gas dripped. It was leaking from down here, and hence all this side just bubbled up on the old tank, and it leaked gas on my valve cover chipped right there, and it just poured all the way. It made its way down and just made a mess of the engine. So now the engine looks like crap. So I managed to find this Super Sport tank, which on the inside was great, on the outside not so great, but I just really wanted to ride it. So what I did is I bought a POR 15 motorcycle restoration kit, and we completely resealed the inside, and it turned out great. I mean, it did a really good job. No complaints on the POR 15 kit whatsoever. So what I did is, since it's November, we're making our way towards winter here in Florida, I decided to rattle can the gas tank just so it didn't look so hideous. Well, I mean, it still does, but not as hideous. And just plop it on there. I was like, hey, you know what? It's direct bolt on. It'll fit. So I just threw it on there, and lo and behold, the Super Sport tank is about 3 to 4 inches longer than the custom tank, because the bolt section for the custom tank is right about here, and obviously the bolt location for this Super Sport tank is right here. So it hangs over this seat, I'm going to say probably about 3 inches, and that's something that we're going to have to deal with in the winter whenever we hibernate this motorcycle and rip it all back apart again and go through it the right way. And we're going to figure out, this tank is going to get sent off to have someone do the body work on it professionally and have it painted. Probably the same green that I painted the custom tank on it, just because I liked it that much. So yeah, I have this rag, this microfiber rag right there, so it's not, you know, totally destroying the leather seat that I purchased actually from eBay, but it was specifically for the custom, and it's actually really nice. I really hate all things eBay, but the seat is really nice. I mean, the leather's a good quality, the stitching is phenomenal. No complaints on the seat whatsoever, but we're gonna have to figure something out, because we're pretty much gonna have to be working around this tank now. So that's number one, biggest mistake ever. Let's see, problems with the carburetors. Oh my gosh. So as you can see, it's got drag pipes, and they are ridiculously loud. The ignition is right there. I'll get into that in a minute. Very loud. So I did a lot of searching as to what jetting for these piece of crap carburetors that Honda decided to put on these engines would work best. And everybody was saying, I was reading a lot of the 115 with 75s, and then taping 3/4 of the pod filter up. And that was the magic trick. But that was with a 4-into-1 exhaust. So what I did was I didn't mess with the slow jet. We bumped up the mains to 120, or no, I'm sorry, we went with 115, and we didn't mess with the slow jet. And that, I didn't put any tape on the pod filters on first startup, and it ran, but it was definitely not all there. It definitely needed work. So I said, what the hell, let me try putting tape on the pod filters. I taped 3/4 of the pod filter up, and it ran a lot better. It was rideable, I could rip on it, it was very responsive. But I just hated the fact that I was taping up so much of the pods. I mean, I really don't like, kind of half-assing things. So after riding it now for some time, it was kind of given me some problems. It had some flat spots. I mean, it's still not running 100%. I'd say it's running like 95% right now, which I'm okay with. So I took some tape off. Now I would call that maybe taping 1/4 of the pod filter up. And it ran a little bit better. So I'd say it's like at 95%, 95% of where it needs to be. But the biggest problem that we had was whenever we first started the motorcycle, we were trying to get it running. I wasn't getting, it's not that I was getting spark. It's just cylinder 1. No, I'm sorry. Cylinder 2 and then cylinder 4. The exhaust temperatures were much, much lower than 1 and 3. So, my first reaction was, okay, ignition, am I getting spark? Everything was there ignition-wise. It was getting spark. So the next big thing, obviously, if, ignition's there, then we went and tried to look at the fuel again. So I found this cb750 manual, I guess they're calling it. And while reading through that, I read that you have to, it's critical to run an E-string guitar string, an E guitar string. In other words, the thinnest guitar string on the guitar through the little hole that the rubber little plug is covering in the middle of the carburetor. And if you don't do that, don't consider your carburetors clean and running properly. So I disassembled the carburetors again. I cleaned them thoroughly, and I did that. I ran an E-string through that tiny little hole. Whenever I went to reassemble it together, I was getting pretty close exhaust temperatures on all 4 cylinders. There's a video, probably the second video that I've uploaded of this same motorcycle with the green tank on there, and me taking the exhaust temperatures, and they're reading pretty close. They're not exact, but they're pretty close, and I'm satisfied with it. So ever since I did that, it ran much, much better. Obviously, it was running on all 4 cylinders. So there's that. Now we're wanting to make side covers for this, simply because everyone deletes the side covers and gets the slim battery under the seat and then relocates the harness and everything. And to me, whenever I see the bikes like that, I really feel like they look like something's missing. And obviously there is something missing, but it just looks too empty in this whole back section right here. So I decided to keep the battery in the same location, obviously, and we're gonna be making some side covers for it. Now my ignition, we got a new ignition switch, obviously, and I zip tied it there for now. Super ghetto, I know. And I'm planning on, whenever we do make side covers for this, I'm planning on having a hole in the side cover right about here, and then obviously putting the ignition right there. So that's gonna solve that issue, and then obviously dealing with all these hoses and breather tubes and all of that stuff. But there's that. I got taller shocks in the rear just because I was kind of wanting to make this bike a little, kind of like a street tracker look with the drag pipes and the moto bars. So with that, we put new levers on this. Works really nice. Got the Biltwell grips. Got this digital gauge, which is also pretty great. Turn on the bike here. Control light comes on. Does that. Works great, actually. So I'm pretty happy with that. The headlight is the factory headlight. I just took it to our powder coat place that I took the, it's really dirty right now. I haven't cleaned it at all. I took it to get powder coated the same place we took the frame to get powder coated, which the guy did a really great job. But yeah, so this is how we secured the tank on here, just so I could ride it, so it's not, you know, going back and forth. I hate it. I hate myself for doing that, but hey, you know, gotta do what you gotta do to ride, right? So let's see, what else? What other problems did we run into with this thing? I think the biggest thing was carburetor issues, and I really want to get the dual carb setup by Cycle X, just because of how much I hate these CV carbs. They are the worst. And I think pretty much every other cb750 owner can agree with me on that. So there's that. Got the plate right there on the side. But yeah, this thing has been, it has been a tough one to deal with. We made these brackets for it right here to mount the new tack. Trying to think of what else. Oh, we've got these blinkers front and rear, along with these headlight mounts. Wheels were just painted black. But this seat is, I'm really happy with it. And most likely what we'll end up doing is, if we don't have to obviously completely modify the frame, we're probably just gonna have to shorten the seat once we figure out how to secure the tank onto the frame. But come this winter, this motorcycle is getting completely ripped apart again. Now that it's running decently, we can try the whole doing this right again. But I just figured I would throw the carburetor information out there, just because that was the biggest headache for us, is finding what would work, since, you know, there's so much information out there. I may take the main jets up to 120, just because I mean, to me it's stupid having tape on the pod filters, because if you're having to restrict the air, then obviously there's not enough gas to compensate for the air. So I want to try and bump the mains up to 120 and see how it runs without any tape on the pod filters. Just because it's at 115 right now and I have the pods taped up a quarter of the way and it's running pretty decently right now. But I think I'm going to strip the engine down, remove all of that paint, and just leave it with a bare metal finish and probably polish the side covers. And probably send the wheels to get powder coated also. Just really go through this thoroughly because I hate how half-assed it is. Not by choice. Well, I mean, obviously it is by choice, but you know, riding season's about to end, and I have the unscratchable itch of riding this thing. So, as ugly as it looks, it's a lot of fun. It is stupid loud with those pipes. Everyone turns around and looks at you. Pretty obnoxious, but you know, being obnoxious is fun. So I'll keep you guys posted as soon as winter comes, and I'll probably throw the GoPro on the helmet and take it for a ride just so you guys can really see how loud this thing is. Alright, thanks for watching, you guys. If you have any questions, just comment.